I'm Julianne Puente, head of school at Albuquerque Academy in New Mexico. The Academy is a leader in the world of independent schools. We honor our past while embracing the future of education. Even though I've been going to school in one shape or form for almost my entire life, I still learn something new every day, and I use that knowledge to tackle the challenges that should interest anyone who has a stake in the future we can't fully imagine. Thanks for joining me to hear about what I learned in school. Hello, everyone. I'm Julianne Puente, and I'm joined here by our co-host and my friend, Associate Head of School, Christine Lenhart. Christine,
Hello.
How are you? You doing well?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Good. Today we're going to talk about something that we've been asked in the past about, maybe not as much lately, but we thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk about why we don't have dedicated midterm and final exams at the Academy. We haven't had exams here since I got here, but I also arrived along with the pandemic when we had to rethink a lot of things. I mean, what were exams like at the Academy prior?
So when I arrived at the Academy about 10 years ago, they were actually very similar to when I was a student here. And we would actually have blackout days where we could not have any other homework. And we would have 2 exams in a day. And those exams, I think, were about 2.5 hours long. I'm not sure on that exactly, but we would take 2 exams a day, and that was kind of what you did. It definitely had a different vibe on campus during exam days, and so that's kind of what we did during that time.
So when they did that, not only did you have exam days, did you also have review days in which no additional new material could be taught as well?
Those are the blackout days. So you couldn't have additional homework in other classes, and you also couldn't learn any new content. At that point, those days were just designated to reviewing the material that would be on the exam.
Right. And so how long did that, like the exam period and the blackout days last about?
I think it was about 2 weeks altogether.
And so the Academy did that twice a year?
They did that twice a year.
So, part of the, when schools began to look at this, they lost a month of instructional time.
Right.
To be able to test for if they use the full amount of time for a 2-hour or 2.5-hour exam.
Right. And when I came back to Academy and I was proctoring exams, what I noticed, what I was kind of struck by, and I don't actually recall how it was when I was a student here, but there's certain markers during the exam where they actually release students. And I think it's about an hour and a half in, and they don't let students just leave when they're done because they don't want it to be distracting for their students. So there are certain markers where they'll say, if you're done, you can now leave. And I was struck by, and I was covering the math exams, but around an hour and a half when they would do that, about 2/3 of the students would leave. There was definitely more than half would leave. So I was struck by that. And then now in the schedule with the 75-minute blocks, I think that's part of the reason we started to really rethink that.
Yeah. The other part is that how they're what are the points or what is the theory behind why you take a midterm exam? There is a lot of credibility or thought into, like, how do you pull material across a semester, or how are you understanding or applying some things that you learned in September onto new concepts that are in December. So there's clearly good reason why you can do that. I just didn't think, and many others, that you needed to knock out for just a midterm 2 weeks of time in all aspects of school to be able to accomplish that. Additionally, I also ran some surveys out for graduates, for kids who were out 1 year, 3 year, 5 years out. And while they did make some mention, it would have been helpful if we had exams, when they also answered the question, well, how long are your current exams in college? Most of them were 75 minutes or less. So that absolutely can be accommodated in our schedule in this way. And by the way, the teachers don't all agree with this. Some really do feel we should have a dedicated exam period in that. And we've just think that the time is better spent in the classrooms.
Well, as you mentioned, I do think there's a benefit of having to revisit all of the content that has been given over a semester and trying to synthesize that information, figure out all of the connections. a lot of our teachers still are giving, final exams where you do have to think about all the material you have learned, but they're using these 2 75-minute blocks or 1 75-minute block to accommodate that. So, some teachers I know are giving like a multiple choice one day, and then on the next day they're giving, short answer type work. So the schedule still does accommodate teachers being able to have students have final exams.
And we also get asked, well, students need to have an understanding of what it's like to sit for 3 hours to take an exam. Again, while I'm sure that they can give examples of some colleges and universities doing that, there are a lot that are not, that are moved to more problem sets and other kinds of exams. The reality is that our kids take, for better or worse, hundreds of AP exams every year that requires them to sit for 3 hours, and you can't get up. So that is, they do have that. And I'm not, in addition to the SAT, ACT, PSAT, and other kinds of testing of where they're sitting, seated in an artificial area, if like a gym or a dining room, taking an exam for multiple hours. So if that is something that is important to families, that that their kids have that experience, that still is happening here.
Many of our students who've come back from college, some have mentioned that they still do have final exams. As you mentioned, I've been told they're about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. But, many of them have also said that the weight of final exams has actually been reduced in colleges. I also had a student, and I was actually quite surprised by this, that said that they actually had an oral exam at their college. And that was pretty recent, actually. So I think even colleges are really revisiting how we assess students and their learning, and how that is done in a productive, beneficial way for students. So I think we're not alone in trying to rethink this.
Right.
But as a teacher, I personally really appreciate getting a lot of the instructional time back, because it does really add up throughout the school year.
Yeah. I mean, even, we call it, contact time versus seat time, and there's all jargon you can talk about with schedules. But if you were to just have the straight contact time in an older schedule, with the amount of time that was set for test prep and for exams, it was actually quite a substantial amount that we were not, that we've now claimed back. Of course, you can argue if it should be every day, every other day, all of those things. But I like the pace too. Again, at previous schools that moved away from this, to the exams, I just haven't. We would never make a decision that we thought was actively harming children, and we actually feel that this is one that is serving them in a real profound way.
Sure. And some teachers still do dedicate time to reviewing, but it's not a full week as it was before.
What are your thoughts about the method or a means of assessment of a single high stakes exam?
Right. I do think that recreating the space for finals, like we've been talking about, has encouraged teachers to assess students differently throughout the semester. I think they've thought about overall assessment differently. It's encouraging them to do more like kind of assessments more often in different ways through various avenues, through projects, through presentations, through not just one high stakes exam. And I think that it really helps teachers to get a different understanding as to how the students are learning, what they've learned, and just different ways of seeing how they have synthesized and gained this knowledge.
Yeah. We do have quote unquote test days, even going towards the end, to make sure that we don't pile on to kids in that way. And the nice thing about our schedule is that most of them can't actually have more than 2 or 3 major assessments in any given day, which would be a massive problem when you have 7 classes or 8 classes in a day in doing that. And also being able to show some trajectory in learning, that how you're performing just in September, if you were able to demonstrate mastery of that concept, how are we assessing that, and that they can demonstrate that they can be able to apply, whether it's in math or science, but it's certainly in English and in history. Writing is a continuous process. It's almost set up differently to how you would even think about some assessments in that way.
So, Julianne, what are different ways, as we're talking about different types of assessment, that you've actually changed the way that you assess students over time?
Yeah, I think I was in the beginning what they would say old school. Use the full 2 hours for the exams. There's a lot of memorization and less of an analysis and a synthesis than I'm actually a little embarrassed by that now. As opposed to now all of my tests and exams are actually open note. I'm like, go ahead. Like you have to be able to apply it. Granted, I'm teaching juniors and seniors in this way, but if looking back in their notes allows them to jog their memory or to be able to piece together things in a more substantial way, then that's what I want. Not simply can they remember an exact term. You remember those terms when you use them often. Mm-hmm. So I'm far more concerned about, do they understand the concepts? I'm teaching world religions. I don't want them to memorize sacred texts. I want them to engage with them. So being able to go back and make a comparison of a creation story between Hinduism or in the Genesis story is far more interesting, I think, to the kids than saying, "Oh, what did Genesis say?" or what was the sutra say. So
and by making that knowledge relevant, they'll remember it more long term.
Way more, and doing that. And so when I have everything that's open note, it discourages cheating or academic dishonor. It encourages them to actually work together, maybe not in a test setting, but when you're there are times we work in pairs and partners that you can bounce off those ideas in that. And so I think you, as a teacher, need to think about what is the entire point of why you're assessing.
Right.
And if you can answer that question well, that you would also understand there are many ways of doing it than simply, match, multiple choice, a short answer, a 5-paragraph essay. Like, I want more for our kids. How about you? How have you changed? How have you assessed?
I have always been a big believer in that students really need to be engaged and involved with the content and not just listen to me talk about it. And so I tend to develop my class in a way that I will provide new content when needed, but really a lot of it has to do with projects and exploration and analysis and synthesis. Even when I'm even talking about teaching geometry. So when people have walked in my classroom, it definitely doesn't look oftentimes like a typical math class where, people might be lecturing at students or having them do some problems on a sheet. Or I really believe in the more energy that they're putting towards learning the content during each class, the more they're going to walk away from and remember what they're learning. So I try to make connections with prior knowledge. I try to have them engage with, how do we see this in the real world? I really try to get them to question and ask the why, and try to really bring the tools that we learn in math together and make them their own. So it's just a very different way of looking at, I'm constantly assessing them. I would say almost every day. Well, every day you're assessing them. You're asking them questions. You're walking around. But I do have a lot of assessments that are focused on projects or sometimes obviously tests and quizzes and things of that sort. But I really believe in providing a variety of opportunities for students to show what they've learned.
Yeah. I also think, we tend to think it's the way that we did it, so why aren't we continuing to do it that way? And that tends to be a little bit harder to have people who haven't been working in school to wrap their arms around. But
sure.
I'm happy school has changed and evolved. I mean, I loved my school experience, and I'm also happy that it's different than it was in the 90s. The way the courses that we're offering, the way things are being taught, the way we're assessed, and the real emphasis on all the aspects of the like the human condition. That it's simply not just how are you performing.
We've learned a lot more about how students learn. And so I think that it's really important that we continue to adjust our practices with the new information and knowledge that we're receiving about, how students retain information, how they understand information. I think that we should be adjusting as teachers as we learn more about students.
Yeah. It's time for our teacher feature, when you get to meet one of our fantastic faculty members at the Academy. Today, I'm really, really happy to interview and to speak with and introduce you to one of our newest faculty members, Mr. Chris Lopez. Chris, welcome.
Hello. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, Chris, this year you've been teaching in the 8-9 division and teaching math, but I'd love to have you share a little bit of your story. How did you end up in Albuquerque?
Well, let's do the short version. My fiance is a medical resident now here at UNM, so she got chosen to be here for OBGYN, and I was doing my PhD in physics at the time. So I finished the master's, and I had probably 2.5 years left of the PhD. So I decided I'm not going to be away from you. So I moved with her. We moved here together. And that was it. I was teaching physics in the college level, like labs. And then I did 1 year of high school physics before I came here. So I was already used to that feeling. I like the high school level better. It's more interactive. The youth, I feel like they want to learn more at that age. They have more questions, and it's really fulfilling as like a teacher role to have them really absorb and want to learn anything in life, really. It's just, so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to stick with teaching. I'm not going to do the rest of the PhD. It was tough. It was rough, Once I got a taste of getting out of there, I was like, I'm out of here. Masters, hey, I'm good. Here you go.
Right.
Yeah.
So, why don't we've spoken a bit about like some of your favorite teachers, and when we were first meeting and last year, you talked about a specific teacher who had really invested in you and that interested you or motivated you to become a teacher. Can you share that story a little bit now?
Yeah. So David Jones was a teacher. He was like, so at the university level, they had like master teachers. That's what they called them. And they would come in and like teach labs and stuff, other things. I also had him in high school. And he would never tell you you're wrong about something. He would just find a way to kind of like bring you back to the main idea. And then after a little bit, you're like, wait, was I wrong? And you realize, yeah, I was wrong. But he would never tell you this. He makes you feel like we can get there without telling you, no, that's not the answer. And his dedication to like building random experiments to make you see what's going on in physics and like another thing. So it was really beautiful to see that. This man admired what he did. He loved it. He has cheesy jokes and and the fact is, like, when you're young, you're like, wow, you're cheesy. But you know what? When you grow up and you're still doing that, it's because it means something to you. You want to put that joke out there even if it doesn't. And I really, when I saw him at the college level, like I was doing physics to work like in a lab somewhere or like do something else in physics. But when I saw him and I was like, maybe I could pursue this, So I worked closely with him. He started doing labs and I started working with him, teaching labs. And I really, really loved working with him. Like he really propelled me in a way that I was like, man, teaching can be this fun, especially physics. Because I was like, what am I going to do with this? I'm going to work in a lab or I'm going to work in some higher level thing that I don't even know right now. I just know that I'm just pursuing this career. Him and this other professor, Solange, she was a math teacher and she was amazing. I took all my math with her. So I struggled with math when I got out of high school. So I did like all my remedials. Then I did like trig, calculus, all my calculus and stuff with her. And she was like a motherly, you know, she would worry about you if you're not doing what you need to do. And like, she really nurtured that math that I needed in order to do physics, you know? So I feel like it was a combination of them too. Like one was already a professor, and David Jones is like a hero to me in teacher world, you know? So,
you know, I think most of us, or especially students, think if those who are math teachers, math came or comes really easily. Why don't you, you know, I really subscribe to a growth mindset, which you're demonstrating on that. Why don't you just talk a little bit about your math journey? Because kids love your class now, and you're exceptionally competent in math, but that was a struggle.
Not the case, yeah. I was always like a C student in high school, mainly because I just never really pushed myself into any direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was just kind of like, I'm going through it. I don't really have a goal. And then later when I graduated, I started cutting hair. I was a licensed barber, so I never really went to college right after high school. So 4 or 5 years in, I was like, you know what, maybe I should go back to school, like college. And I was like, all right, well, what do I got to do? I got to go back. And I took a little exam or whatever, and I found that I had to take all the remedials available before I even start a college credit. So whatever, I took all the remedials. I worked my way from the bottom up, like adding big numbers, fractions. And then by the time I took a college credit, I was like, okay, I feel prepared now. It's crazy. Like now I feel prepared. I just spent 3 semesters of doing prep, and now I feel prepared. What is my goal? Because what am I going to just do with, you know, why am I pushing myself so hard? That's when I discovered, okay, maybe I like teaching. Maybe I like physics. You know, it was a weird one. I had to change my major a couple times, and then I decided physics, but I really pushed myself every time I took a class, and I found different ways of studying. I would find like YouTube videos on like how to study better. I would like take my shoes off and wiggle my toes, you know, because they want you to be relaxed. I'll have mints with me all the time, because they say if you have mints while you study, you have mints while you take a test. For test taking, I used to be bad until I realized, okay, there's a different method. I go to the answer I know first, and then I work from there. Instead of just number one and I get stuck, you know?
Right.
There was all these little methods that I used because I had to like transition getting better. And then when I got to Solange's class, that was the real first challenge like ever in my trig class. I was trying really hard, and I feel like I got like a C and a D in my first 2 tests. And I was trying hard. It wasn't like I was putting max effort. And she told me to drop the class because of my grades, and I almost cried. I was like, what? Like, I've been trying so hard. Is there anything else that I can do? You know, please, I can go to this. So I stopped working for like 3 weeks. I went to tutoring every single day. And she said that the only way you can pass this class is if you get an A in the final, which replaces your lowest grade. So you would have 2 Fs or 2 whatever and 2 As. So you would get a C in this class. And that's what I did. I took 3 weeks off. I studied every single day, like morning to night, bothering every tutor, going to her office, and I got an A in the final. And she was like, I went to her office to see the grade, and she goes, she was Jamaican. She goes, Chris, come here. You know, like, she goes, let me see your arm. Because she always thought I had answers on my arm, like equations and stuff, 'cause I had tattoos. And right when she said that, I knew that she was happy.
Right.
I started crying. I walked away. I went to the bathroom, and I was like so excited with like what I just accomplished. I came back after, and I was like, did I pass? She goes, yes. And she like gave me a hug or whatever. And she was like, that's what I mean. She was like a mother to me. That was like my first real, like you did something and you accomplished it. After that, everything else was that level of effort, and it was like a breeze.
Can I tell you, my that's a great story.
Yeah.
This is a whole other topic, but my issue with you getting a C is you demonstrated an understanding, and your trajectory was an A.
Yeah.
And just because you didn't understand something in September, but you demonstrated that understanding in December, a C is not represented.
That was the best C I ever got in my life. That C to me was an A, 100%.
And I understand.
And that last final was a cumulative. So it was like everything.
That's my whole point.
It was crazy.
Right.
It was the craziest, one of the craziest college moments of my life. Like it was, from there on, it was like,
I would have given you an A.
Well,
just saying.
Yeah.
Or an F. but if you
no
if you would have demonstrated an understanding, which you did, Anyway, that's a whole.
She even made me her LA for 3 years after learning assistant.
Yeah.
So for all these
Nice.
classes, I would go and they, they pay you
gotcha.
to help out, and so it was really a eye opener.
Right. So I know that you love physics. What and you'll be teaching physics here at the academy. So how do you see the correlation between math and physics, and what about physics is like drew you in more in the content and that interest you in the teaching as well?
When you can put math to real life application, that's when everything changes, and that's what I love. So if you're doing math, y equals mx plus b, find x, find y, you might not understand why you're doing that now. You're building a foundation, right? Logic, and also for higher level classes, you're actually going to be solving it for a value that means something. And that's what I love about physics. So for math, right now that I'm teaching it, I'm trying to show them where it can apply. So that way they're not just doing something and kind of don't see the bigger picture. So like, for example, we did like protractor stuff. And instead of just staying in the class working with protractors, I took them outside. We measured the distance from a tree, the angle of the height of the tree, right, with the angle. And then we measured the height of the tree using math. And it kind of puts real life application to the stuff we're doing outside. And now the height of that tree because of this little protractor and the distance from the tree. So it's like all that is physics every week. And I love that because like there's an experiment where I tell them use these kinematic equations and you're going to throw this ball, projectile motion, this ball into that cup. If you don't make it, you're going to get 2 tries. If you don't make it, you get an F. Right? I scare them a little bit, right? But we do all the math, and I know that they need to get 170 centimeters, right, in their math, and then they'll align everything, and when they shoot it, they make it. And that's when they realize, in my class in the physics, they jump up, they go crazy, because they did this whole math, and then tuned up this machine to their math, and they made it in this thing.
Right.
That is the most beautiful scene you'll ever see. These kids are just going, and the fact that I tell them it's an F or an A. But, but I make it so that, like, I know the numbers they're supposed to get, and if you're not on track, I'll be like, hey, try this out, do this. Okay, now you try your experiment. And every week is like that. We're doing stuff just like that every week. And that's, like, it's magical for them. You know, like, I just did this thing, I applied it, look at me, And that's the real magic in the physics, That's what I love about teaching physics. And in the math, I wish I could do more of that. But it's really, the math is just to kind of set that foundation for these type of classes. Chemistry, there's a lot of that. These higher level classes, there's a lot more of that stuff. So
right. Outside the classroom, I mean, you have demonstrated yourself a real, what we call a school guy. You're coaching, you're with the kids, you're chaperoning, you eat lunch with them. Tell me about what interests you, outside the classroom, and why you like, really 8th through 12th graders in the way that you do.
I like the real answer for me, to be honest. I feel like in my mind, I'm not grown up yet, So like I have this.
That's what every parent wants to hear from their
like
teachers.
I have a real job, like I have an adult job, and I'm really doing this thing. But in my mind, I'm like, "What's up, bro? Yeah, you're gonna go do this right now?" I'm kind of leveling with them and getting into their world. And also, I thrive in chaos, where like some people don't like all that noise and whatever. I like it.
Yeah.
I want to see how loud you can get, or I want to see how these limits you can push and like do these things, And when kids open up to you, it's a real nice thing. Because then you see what they're really thinking. You can persuade them not to do certain things because they trust you now. There's a lot of like back and forth with that I really like. Because we speak on a real level, I could tell you, don't do that, man. Don't mess around. Like, and they'll ask me real questions that, these are things that are tough. Like, I don't think you should be doing that. All right. I think that, okay. All right. And they might take your opinion because you're real with them. But mostly I'm a people person, so I really like camaraderie. I like, but with the students, I like them to be honest with me. I don't want to feel like I'm an adult, you're a kid, and you can't open up to me and tell me what you're really feeling right now because of this, or maybe you have a question about that. I want to know those things, And the coaching thing is really because I play these sports personally, and now that I'm coaching it, I feel like, oh wow, this is like doing what I'm doing in the classroom on a different level,
Right.
right? Because the coaching is a little more toughness, and I like that because it gives them like that tough love. Some of the parents have come up to me like, hey, this student, I don't want to say names, but this student really built a bond with you. Thank you so much, whatever. And it seems like we're messing around. Like as an adult, I'll be like, hey man, I'm messing around with them, but really it's getting them to open up.
So, well, what are some other interests you have? You're I didn't know that you were an outdoors person in the way that you are, but I know that that you always love sports. Are you into music? Do you like movies? Are you a cartoon guy? What do you like?
So like every summer, since we don't work in the summers, I've done I'll learn new hobbies. So last summer I solved the Rubik's Cube, right? So like 4x4 cube. I learned how to juggle. Learn how to juggle 4 balls, pins. So like I do that all the time. A unicycle, right? Why not? Like I have all these weeks off. Like why not? So I YouTube something, or I'll get something in my head, right? I did the unicycle. I did knife throwing. So I bought knives. I made my own like target board. I YouTubed how to make it. I bought a saw. A lot of random sewing. I bought this is my second sewing machine now. So I sew. I went to lessons last 2 summers ago actually. And in Julianne Fabrics, this lady tried to convince me to buy this machine because I went there to buy some fabric because I had just made like a pillow. And I was like, oh, whatever, let me go buy fabric. And she tried to convince me to buy this really expensive machine. And I was like, no, lady, I just started making a pillow. But, she was really convincing. The machine was really nice. I told her, look, if I buy this machine from you, you got to give me lessons. And she did. She gave me lessons for 2 months, twice a week. And now I make every tote bag that I wear now is my tote bag that I've made. I made 2 teachers here and a student, like a pencil pouch.
I love it.
Like I make these things as gifts now. Because really, you would think, oh, why don't you sell them? No, I'm selling this thing. I love it. I
love it.
So, yeah.
All right, and now there's going to be a little part of our show we call lightning round. I'm going to read you either a pair of words or ask you a question. Give me the first answer that comes in your head. You ready?
Okay.
Okay, red or green?
Green.
Best breakfast burrito?
Breakfast burrito?
Yeah, where do you get them?
Oh.
Chris, come on, man.
Breakfast burrito? Nowhere. I haven't.
You don't have breakfast burrito? You don't go to like Frontier? You don't?
No, the only time I had breakfast burrito was here when you guys supplied it for me.
All right, we're going to fix that. Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Oh, see, there's no way you live in Miami and you're an early bird.
Exactly. You
right?
See?
Geometry or algebra?
Algebra.
What's your favorite spot on campus?
Soccer field.
Is there a memory that you have on that? I know.
Yeah, I went to watch some games for some of my students, and I was like, man, this is a beautiful field. And just sitting there in the shade, it was nice. Yeah, it felt like large. Like the campus feels large from that angle, and that's what I like. It feels like a university from that angle. Because I could look up and see the buildings all the way in the background and the mountain back there. And I'm like, my God, this is a beautiful view. I even took a picture and sent it to my family. I was like, look what I'm doing. I'm watching this game.
Right.
Look at the background of this huge campus and look at that mountain back there. I really love that view.
There are times I'm on this campus that I'm like, how did I get, how am I so lucky to be here?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the mountains, when you live in like skyscraper cities or surrounded by water, that's a whole other style of living. But the mountains, there is something so alluring about them.
And from there, it's like a backdrop. You
Oh.
know? And yeah, like you don't realize how nice it is unless you've worked somewhere else or been other places where, because then you're like, bro, all I see is 4 walls anywhere else I work, And then the campuses are not like this. They're all buildings everywhere and stuff. This is beautiful. It's like you could see
it's clean,
campus.
it's safe,
clean,
it's beautiful.
buildings,
the
the
kids
mountain.
are amazing.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
Every day I'm like, oh, I'm so lucky.
Yeah, trust me, I feel the same way. But I feel like you got to actually experience something else to see the beauty in that, which you shouldn't have to. But I'm like, oh, these grapes or all this food. Yeah, everybody's like, what? It's just meat, man. I'm like, no. Look at this stuff. There's rice. I'm like,
right.
But yeah.
Anyway, well, thank you so much for spending some time with me and for sharing your story. And we're really lucky to have you at the Academy, Chris.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
now for the mailbag. Here's an email that we received. It says, Dear Miss Puente, it's great to see the Academy receiving so much support in the form of financial gifts. But how does it help my student if they are not involved in a particular activity that's the focus of a donation? Well, I would say that the way that all students and community members often benefit from financial gifts is that often the financial gifts are used in a way that it frees operational dollars. So instead of having to pay to repave or to resurface the tennis courts that cost it's about $175,000, because a grant was received for that, we could take that money and use it elsewhere around the campus. It could be used for things like for a library or for dining or for things like fixing HVAC issues. They can also move into operational budgets that help us with books and some things that need to be fixed on campus. So every gift that frees dollars allows, benefits everybody in the community in that way. So that is a short answer to a more complicated issue, but I hope that shed a little bit of light on that. I want to thank Christine Lenhart.
It's always a pleasure talking to you, Julianne.
And I'm glad that we got to explore the topic of exams today, and as well as the opportunity to talk to our guest, Chris Lopez. I'm very fortunate to be part of a team that cares so deeply about education. Go Chargers!
Go Chargers!
Thanks for listening to What I Learned in School to learn a little bit about Albuquerque Academy. Send us your comments and questions to headofschool@aa.edu. You can listen to all of our episodes on our website at aa.edu and wherever you get your podcasts.